Hi, Petros.
Hi.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, hello. Hi, Petros.
Hi,
How
hi.
are you doing? How you doing? All well?
Yes.
Absolutely well. Well
Very
and good.
Perfect.
So I think we can start. For everyone who watching us, I would like to present Andrew Burgess, who is a political advisor to the ALDE Party Secretariat, and also a member of European Parliament, Petros Austrevicius. I hope I say it right. And we will start from Alexandra Sachenko, who is a member of Ukrainian Parliament and the head of the Melodichka. So the floor is yours, Alexandra.
Thank you, Alina. I will take a few minutes just to say great thanks to you, Petros and Andrew, for having time to share with us this topic. This is first time ever, so it's even more we thank you to have such a educational part about how the elections go in EU, because it's definitely some kind differ from the state level. We have this our Zoom is going on YouTube, so we give the link for our members on YouTube to see this I don't know, podcast about elections in EU. So not wasting the time, one more time, Petros, want to highlight my gratitude for all you are doing for Ukraine, and also for as a member of the European Parliament, as a person, and for taking time today to do this. And of course, Andrew, for your future knowledge that you will share. It's really important for us as youth wing of the Servants of the People Party and servants of the People Party itself. So we'll not waste any time. Thank you, and wish all the people who looking for our program of today a lot of new knowledge. And type your question on YouTube, and then Alina will ask them after the main agenda to our two speakers. Thank you once more, and have a good event today.
Thank you.
So I think the next one will be you, Petros, to tell us more about European Parliament and the elections. So you can start.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I apologize for some noise which might be coming from outside, but I'm taking part right now in the book fair in Vilnius. It's a huge event. I mean, many book publishing houses, individual authors are presented, and I just saw some kiosks which are dedicated for Ukrainian books, and some people from Ukraine are taking part in discussions. So it's a very lively event. I am, as a member of European Parliament, you can see it. I present my report about what I did and what I achieved during my 4 years and 4.5, 5 years, in fact, once working in the European Parliament. By the way, politicians must report back to their constituency for people. So that's why it's an important, by the way, job to report back and to inform people, what did you do? That's why politicians can't be lazy ones. They can't be slow ones. They usually have to do something in order to go forward. That's why politics is a very dynamic business, I have to admit. I like people who have new initiatives, who have some vision, because there are many things to be accomplished. Speaking about the European Parliament, and look, we have a very special time right now in the European Parliament what comes to business with Ukraine. Next week, we will vote on a Ukraine facility, on a very special document. It's about 50 billion euros, which will be provided to Ukraine from 24 to 27, for 4 years period. It was a very unique negotiations and document itself. It's about reforms. and support of Ukraine. Of course, major part of that 50 billion will go for macro financial assistance, but this is something what we really been trying to do as soon as possible, because we know Ukraine needs a lot of macro financial assistance, not just military assistance, which is existentially important, and we have to provide Ukraine increasingly with weaponry and all kind of ammunition and technical stuff. But money matters, because lots of national budget of Ukraine goes on defense. The rest goes on social and public policy sphere. So that was one thing related to Ukraine. Next week, we will approve an important resolution concerning 2 years anniversary of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. It will be our very much political declaration about how we see events right now and what we suggest to be done in future. I will be negotiating this document on behalf of Renew Europe, because usually it must be negotiated among the political groups. We have a very good basic document, a draft document for those negotiations, and it's just a small part of everything which is connected with Ukraine. I can tell you that Ukraine is a very important item on our agenda, because we do take care of Ukraine's situation. So we adore what Ukrainians do themselves for defending as well as withstanding all the challenges Ukraine and Ukrainians are facing for the time of being. And, you know, a lot of things, what comes to Ukraine's future, it's of course related to young people. So you are the generation which will see different future of Ukraine. So you will witness Ukraine being as a member of European Union as well as NATO. So you have to prepare for that. You have to look towards future with a more optimistic and probably with a practical kind of attitude, and you know, learning and preparing yourself for once Ukraine will be in European Union and NATO means some kind of practical lessons. It's about the you know, being stagiaires, being participants, visiting the European Parliament in Brussels, in Strasbourg, being assistants to members of European Parliament. I promised Sluga Narodu, young wing of Sluga Narodu, to be as active as possible. Probably I didn't fulfill all my promises yet, but I can tell you that in the European Parliament we have many members of and my colleagues who take stagiaires from Ukraine. Those are very oftenly only girls, because you know that men are not allowed. You know the situation because of the military situation in Ukraine. But I hope we can negotiate with leadership of your country and to have more all kind of Ukrainian students and postgraduates with us. We had many in my office during this legislature, during 4.5 years. I probably had some 8 or 9 Ukrainian representatives, young Ukrainians who've been very part of my team. I opened all the files. They took part in all the discussions in preparing decisions, and you know, it's a great experience. So that's why I'm telling you so long about this, because it's really important. Because to become a politician and to prepare for a different future, which lies ahead of young generation in Ukraine. So you have to learn as much as possible, not just from books, but from the practical engagement. So that's why, you know, we are facing elections from 6th to 9th of June this year. I hope that Liberals, ALDE and Renew Europe representatives will be as successful as possible. We will be back to European Parliament already in July. And I hope from this autumn on, we will have again this program extended, inviting young Ukrainians. And I promise to keep my office doors, if I am re-elected, and I hope so, open for Ukrainians, for all those dedicated persons who want to learn. And Sluga Narodu will be the party which representatives, young representatives, will be most welcome to my office. And not only by this, we will organize more different seminars, discussions, online and offline, visiting Ukraine in different Ukrainian cities. By the way, I'm still having a great project which must be accomplished, and I hope to have something to report to you back in the end of March. But let's keep it as a secret, as a small secret yet. And of course, these elections are important for Europe. I hope the European Parliament will be well accepting liberals, Democrats, and all whom we call Renew Europe for the time of being. We need competitive, dynamic, open-minded politicians. Many challenges lie ahead of us. Our group is well incorporated into the decision-making of the European Parliament and EU institutions. We have very proactive point of view. And of course, issues which will be in elections are mainly about security. And Ukraine is a very part of this debate. It's about economy. It's about migration as well. But I'm sure we will do our best to prove all Europeans, our electorate, that we are a competitive political force, and we will come back with, I hope, not fewer of us than we are for the time of being. We are 101 at this moment. It's a great number. Let's keep it. And I hope that already next European elections in 2029 will be, hopefully, the election, then Ukraine might take part in it. Of course, accession negotiations will take time, but we are speaking about observer status of Ukraine. Next week, we will approve an important report about deepening and EU enlargement. I am a rapporteur on this file. And by the way, we have a very good proposal for all candidate countries to be provided with the observership status as early stage as possible. And you might be those who will be selected by Ukraine. So that's why stay in touch, get involved. Let's have our discussion going well, keeping in touch. And indeed, look, this ball, which is made of of European Parliament symbols, it's a kind of, you have to disassemble and then assemble. I'm sure it goes on your side, and you will pick it up in order to continue a good European tradition, you know, to stay in European family. And in fact, I'm looking forward for very successful accession negotiations with Ukraine, to get your full membership in the European Union. And then many doors will be open, especially for young people. But of course, be competitive, learn things which you do now even better. And of course, I'm sure ALDE Secretariat and Renew Europe people, all politicians will embrace you, invite you, and we will stay in touch, and continuously we will be good partners, good neighbors, and indeed great Europeans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Petros, for your strong input. And yes, of course, we hope for the next European elections, Ukraine also will take part. And next will be Andrew, and I think we can go in depth about the European Union and the elections. So the floor is yours, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and it's a real pleasure for me to speak to you all today. So my name is Andrew Burgess. I work for the ALDE Party Secretariat in Brussels. I'm senior political advisor, but I'm also going to be a member of the campaign core team that's working from headquarters for the European elections. So it's a pleasure for me today to talk to you a bit about the European Parliament elections that are coming up. I'm going to dive in to give you sort of an overview of the elections for how we're approaching this as a campaign. So you've heard from Petras, one of our members of the European Parliament. From the political side, I'm going to talk a bit more on the technical and the campaign side. I'll talk a bit about the challenges that the European campaign is going to do. I'm going to talk also about our own European campaign that we're going to do as ALDE Party. And then I'm going to leave you with a few thoughts on how you can help us with the campaign. Because as Petras said, even though unfortunately this time you will not be voting in the European elections, don't think that you have a role, you do not have a role that you can help us here. So I'll leave a few ideas for you there. And then I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have at the end. So Alina has very helpfully put my slides on the screen so you can see. So the first one just to show is this is the current status of the European Parliament. So currently we have 705 seats. The Liberals are the ones in yellow. And as Petras said, we currently have 101 members of the European Parliament. If you move to the next slide, what will change slightly for this time is that the number of seats is going up. So this is mainly due to my country, the United Kingdom, having voted to leave the European Union, that some extra seats became empty in the chamber as they've reallocated some of the seats. So instead of 705, we're going to move to 720 that will be elected in June. As you'll see from this table here, the largest country with MEPs is still Germany with 96. Closely followed by France and then Italy. It's done on population. But there are countries that are receiving extra seats compared to the last election. So Spain gains 2, the Netherlands will gain an extra 2 from what it currently has. So the dynamic in Parliament is going to shift a little bit, mainly because the number of seats and as accordingly that. And these elections, so we're talking about 400 million voters voting in the space of 4 days. It's going to be quite an incredible thing, but it presents also plenty of challenges because there's not one European election. It's very much largely 27 national elections. They just all elect members to the same European Parliament. So if the next couple of slides, I will show some of the differences and the different challenges that this presents for us when trying to coordinate a campaign. So the first bit I will mention in the top left corner is that everybody votes on a different day. So in the European Union, there are the rules that govern the elections are still the decision of the national country. They're still of the national parliament in the national governments. So the European Council, all it can really do is say, we want to hold the elections during this period. And then it's up to the countries to elect, to pass their own bills in their own parliaments to then mean the election can take place. As a result, in Europe, we have elections that take place over 4 days. And the graphic in the top left shows you a breakdown of these. So the first country that will vote will be the Netherlands, and they will vote on the Thursday. But the vast majority of countries in Europe will vote in the European elections on the Sunday, the 9th of June. What this means is even though the vote closes in the Netherlands on that day, they will not announce their results on that day. They have to wait until the 9th because there is you can't announce your results early. Moment. The Czech Republic votes over 2 days. the 7th and the 8th. So there's going to be different campaigns all happening at different times with lots of different rules. On the 9th of June, there are a few that also have a little star next to them. These are countries which have compulsory voting, where you have to vote. So in most countries, you don't have to vote, and therefore we see turnout be around the 30 to 40%, sometimes as high as 50%. But in countries where you have to vote, obviously the turnout is very high, such as in Belgium, where I think it's often around 98 to 99% turnout in some of the elections. Because they set their own different rules, it means that members of the European Parliament are elected differently. So on the main graphic on the right-hand side, you'll see the threshold for the elections. So I believe in Ukraine, your threshold was 5% previously, and now they're getting rid. But across Europe, they have lots of different thresholds. So in Germany, there's no. So 1% in Germany is basically 1 seat in the European Parliament. You don't have to get 5% to then have a chance of having seats. But in France, you have to get 5% in order to be allocated a seat. And you can see the colors, just the different shades of the different countries that have thresholds. Some, such as Lithuania, where Petras was elected, they have a 7% threshold if you run 2 separate parties in one list. So there's lots of different hurdles to make sure you're aware of, and also that obviously then changes how we approach certain elections in certain countries. The icon in the left side shows the voting age. So there have the slide just up there, Alina, the bottom left. Yeah, perfect, that one. So it shows the voting age across the European Union. So there are countries where there are moves to change the voting age to allow young people to vote. The most recent change has been in Belgium, where only 2 months ago did the government agree that 16-year-olds can vote in the European elections. But unlike the rest of the elections on that day, which are mandatory, the European elections will not be mandatory for 16-year-olds. But it's a country where the debate is very active, and it has changed. We could see others that decide to change their voting age. Most are 18, but some are younger. Yeah, there you go. So then on the next slide, there's a few other bits that I've mentioned. On the left-hand side, this here is just to symbolize how you vote. So when you go to a ballot box, many people would put a cross in next to the name that you want to vote for. In some countries, actually, it's a tick. So we've got to be careful when doing campaign literature to make sure that you put a tick if you need to tick, or a cross if you need to cross. Because if you put the wrong symbol in, then it's counted as a non-valid vote. And that obviously is a shame. And different countries, again, across Europe, all have different rules based on their elections. It's a real fantastic puzzle to get your head around. The one in the bottom left corner, this is the circle. This is a very unusual one, but this is actually how Finland votes. So Finland does not have a list or a candidate bit. What you have to do is each candidate has a number, and you write the number of the candidate that you want to vote for in the circle. So it's a completely different way of voting, and to my knowledge, it's the most different of all of our European ones. The big table on the right-hand side shows how you can vote. So obviously you can vote if you're in your own country, and you can do it in person. That's pretty standard across Europe. But there are some countries where you cannot vote by post, or you can vote by post, or you can vote online, or you cannot vote online. There are some countries where you can vote in the embassy if you live abroad. There are some, like Estonia, where you vote online. It's all digital. So all of these present different challenges for how do you do your campaign. Because if a lot of your party voters are living outside your country, then they either have to vote at the embassy, if that is possible, or they have to travel back to their own country. which then has extra difficulties. And can you motivate your voters enough to travel back in order to vote for you? Or do you find some other role for them within the campaign? Okay, so we move to the next slide, please, Alina. This one is not particularly easy to see, but Alina will happily share it, I'm sure, with anybody who wishes to see it. But this is about the campaign period. So, as we've established, there are 27 different campaign and elections, but we also have 27 different national campaign periods. Some are really short. For example, Portugal is 12 days, so you're not allowed to campaign outside of 12 days before an election. Some there's no limit, but some also have quiet days before an election, so you're not allowed to talk about the election. So you've got to be very careful in some of our countries that we don't accidentally do our European campaign in a country like Croatia, which has a 24-hour quiet period before the election day, where you're not supposed to campaign. Next slide, please, Alina. So as you can see from all of these, there are plenty of challenges just in actually organizing and getting people to vote, which presents us quite a lot of potential issues in the headquarters when we're trying to plan our campaign. But it also allows us to do a little bit of different things in different countries because they have different ways of campaigning. But one of the biggest challenges always with the European elections is turnout, getting people activated and they want to go and vote. This is the last Eurobarometer survey, which you can see. It shows the wish to vote and the likely vote. And we're looking sort of around the 50–60% area. In some countries, it's a bit higher. In some countries, it's a bit lower. Our hope overall is that 2024 has a higher turnout than 2019, where the EU average was just over 50%. But the lowest turnout was in 2019 was in Slovakia, with just 22% of people went to the polls. So with these elections, there's a lot of national context that will be involved in them. But obviously, we would like as many people as possible to be motivated to vote in these European elections, that they understand what is at stake. And hopefully they will then come and they will vote Liberal. Alina, next slide, please. So having looked at all of the different challenges faced, I'll talk briefly on what's at stake in these elections. So this slide here is to represent our Spitzenkandidaten. So you will have likely heard of this debate that's in Brussels and increasingly becoming more prominent. But there is a movement towards each political family choosing one candidate or maybe two to be their main candidates of the campaign. These people would then be in the front line for choices for the top jobs after the European elections. So 5 years ago, the picture on the left shows the all of the different candidates of our European families. Because as the lead candidate of a campaign, they would be the candidate for the president of the European Commission. On the right, it shows the candidates that we currently have declared. So we have Ursula von der Leyen, who's announced that she wishes to have a second mandate as Commission President. Next 2 weeks' time, 6–7 March, the EPP is expected to name her as their official candidate. Next to her is the current European Commissioner Schmidt, he's called. He's from Luxembourg. He is the candidate of the European Socialist Party. And then the European Greens, they usually always choose a male and a female to be their lead candidates. They did the same again this year, so they selected 2 of their leading MEPs to be their co-lead candidates. The ALDE/Renew family, we will elect our own Spitzenkandidat on March the 20th, but I will speak a bit more about that a bit later. The next slide then, please, Alina. So this hasn't come out super well, but this is one of the main things that is at stake in these European elections. It's all about the balance of power within them. So you'll remember from the previous slide at the start, the Liberal family has 101 MEPs, and as Petrus described, is a kingmaker in the European Parliament. The European People's Party, the Conservative Christian Democrats, they often need the votes of the Socialist Party and the Liberals in order to find a majority in the European Parliament. As a result, the Liberal voice is very strong. We're able to say, we will guarantee you the majority votes if you make these changes to these bills. It's been a position that has served us very well in this mandate and also in the past mandate before that. But looking at the projections, and there have been quite a lot of independent projections as well. I selected this one purely because it's the most colourful, so it's easier to visualize. But this one from Europe Elects shows that the parties to the right of centre, so the light blue is the EPP, the darker blue is the ECR, the Conservatives, the black is the ID, so it's the far right, and the grey are the non-attached independent MEPs. They would together, if they were able to work together, have a majority in the European Parliament based on current projections. This would mean the European Parliament would change quite considerably in how it functions, who would be in the top jobs in the Parliament, who would be present on parliamentary committees, which bills would be put to votes. It would change the dynamic quite substantially. The bar on the left shows sort of the trend lines from the last 5 years, so you can see roughly how we've operated. The Liberal one is in yellow, so it's been as third for quite a long time. But in the last, well, 6 to 8 months, perhaps, ours has basically slightly gone down, but the populist Conservatives, the ECR, are slightly trending upwards. So this is obviously a trend that we don't want to see happen in the elections, because we would quite like to stay as the third biggest party, because then the Liberal voice is as strong as it can be in the next European Parliament. And next one. Yeah, thank you. So I'll speak briefly now about the ALDE campaign. So in the next European elections, so as you may know, Slugano Rodu is a member of ALDE. ALDE sits together with the European Democrats and also the members of parliament from Emmanuel Macron's Renaissance Party to form the Renew Europe group in the European Parliament. We've all agreed that the best way to approach these elections and to fight the populists is to run a joint campaign. So we will run a joint campaign called Renew Europe Now. And we will formally launch our campaign on the 20th of March, so just in 3 weeks' time. As part of that, the ALDE party has also done its own preparations. So as the ALDE party, we have put together a European election manifesto. To do this, we've worked throughout 2023. We started by holding lots of town hall meetings all over Europe. So we talk to the citizens to find out what they want. But we also brought together a lot of people from our member parties. I'm very proud as ALDE that we give a voice to non-EU parties because we still believe that you have an important role to play in the European elections. And Slugano Rodu was a member of our drafting committee. So there has been somebody from you around the table as part of the draft. Then from, where am I looking? So in March, we will discuss, we will adopt, and we will announce our manifesto. After that, we will then elect our Spitzenkandidat, so our lead candidate, who will be our face on the European campaign. And then we will have a number of debates where this Spitzenkandidat will participate on behalf of Renew. And we will also be actively working with our parties in all 27 EU countries to try and say, you are going to do your own national campaign, but how can ALDE and Renew, as the European campaign, add extra messaging to what you're doing in your country? So we will be doing a lot of that. Yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, so I mentioned the campaign kickoff, so it will be on the 20th of March. Anyone is welcome. So if there's anybody from your party or Slugana Rodu that is going to be in Brussels, obviously you're very welcome to join. It will be live streamed, so you will be able to watch it. Our plan is to have as many of our European Liberal family in one room at the same time, a united, strong front, so we can show that together we will do a strong campaign for the European elections, so then we can be a strong voice inside the next European Parliament. On the right-hand side, this is actually a clip from our draft manifesto. Ukraine is obviously featured a lot, but there is one passage in particular that I've highlighted here, just so you can have an idea that I don't think this will be changed. So I think this will be part of the final manifesto, but you can see it shows our family's clear support to Ukraine's membership of NATO and the EU. We're in favor of you guys joining us as quickly as we can. And yeah, recognizing that your war is also our war, and that security and defense is going to be a big issue that our voters are going to be worried about, and therefore it is something that we have to talk about. In the bottom of this particular slide, this is a wall that we have downstairs in our headquarters. So this is showing the lead candidates of our member parties. So these are our future MEPs that we know. Most of our parties have not yet announced, or they are in the process of electing their members of their candidates. Some have already announced, again, all at different speeds, all at different times. It's a wonderful patchwork of everything in Europe. But these are the ones we have so far. Happy to say that it's quite gender balanced at the moment, male, female. And yeah, we expect this wall to be very full because we have at least 50 of our parties that are campaigning in these elections. From the headquarters, we'll be working with them and their teams to try and help as much as we can. And yeah, this is perhaps where I can sort of move into how you guys can help. So as I've mentioned, security, defense, and the war in Ukraine is obviously going to be a big issue. It is of concern to voters across Europe increasingly. Therefore, I am quite certain that our member parties, particularly in countries which share a border with Ukraine, having help on the elections, whether that's you talking to your friends family that live abroad, or they organize, or who knows, there'll be many ways where you can spread the word, encourage people to vote for the Liberal Party in that country, because we want as many MEPs as possible. If it's sharing our campaign messages, so in a couple of weeks we will launch our website for the campaign with the launch. On this website will be plenty of materials that we hope that will be useful to campaigns and parties across Europe, to share, to connect, to show what we've done, what we're doing, and what we want to do. But then also supporting our candidates online or as part of their own campaign. So there's one particular candidate that I want to draw your attention to. She's on the wall there in the top right, holding a sunflower. She has the potential to be the first ever Ukrainian member of the European Parliament. She is a Ukrainian national who is the head of the list for one of our Liberal parties in Latvia. She currently works here in Belgium, but under the Latvian law, she is able to be a candidate, even if she doesn't have a Latvian nationality. But she has another European one. So under the Latvian rules, she's able to be a candidate. So yeah, so if you guys all want to help get a Ukrainian, the first one of many, hopefully, into the Ukrainian Parliament, then you can work towards it in Latvia. But we also really want to have to increase the youth engagement in the European elections. So you are members of LIMEC, our youth organization. LIMEC are very active as always. They will have their own manifesto. They will also do their campaign as well to try to encourage more young people to vote. Please get involved in this. As I said at the start, just because you're not electing members of the European Parliament, don't think there's not something you can helpfully do. Any help will be gratefully welcomed. And yeah, the more the merrier, because we want to be a really strong voice in the European Parliament. We want more people like Petras in the European Parliament that are going to speak up and speak out for Ukraine, and not try to prevent enlargement and try to hold Europe back a bit. So I think on that note, I will move to Q&A. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I hope that was an interesting insight into the challenge of organizing a European election, and hopefully it gives a little bit more context to our campaign. And yeah, I hope it was interesting.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I was making some notes, and now I want to comment them. So firstly, about the manifest in Limerick, we already made it in September, and now it's even in the internet, so everyone can see it. And I will tell you that there is not so many people who sign it. I mean, the youth wings. So the Молодіжка is there, but it's, I think, like 7 or 8 are just organizations from 40 or 44 who are in Limerick. So, but yeah, we were the part of it. The second, me and Alexandra, we are going to the ALDE Congress, so in March, so we will be there and see you also. And I have also some questions. For example, you were telling us about the Spitzencandidate, and I was in Berlin like 1 month ago at the FDP Congress, where Maria Agnes Strack-Zimmermann was elected as a Spitzencandidate. But what was the main topic at the Congress, that, as you know, the AfD in Germany now having more votes than FDP, and it's like the problem of all the Europe now, that more anti-refugees, more fascist, more so don't know how to say it more correctly, parties will win instead of liberal parties. What do you think about this?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And yeah, it is a trend that we have noticed for many years now. The problem we have as liberals overall is we like to explain why people need to vote for us. So when we talk to somebody to say, you need to vote for us because without us, this would happen rather than this, populists present a very easy message with no solutions, and then they can hoover up all those that are unhappy with the current government, or they can stand on the side and shout very loudly. The problem is they're shouting very loudly and they are picking up a lot of this. Another factor that's contributing to this is that there are quite a lot of governments now in Europe where they need to have coalitions. And the result of having a coalition government is you tend to not bring the populists into government. So then they are the biggest opposition. So then it becomes a bigger bloc then that attracts even more votes. I mean, we recently saw this in the Netherlands, where after the election, the biggest party was the far-right PVV. Since not many people want to vote to work with them, they have still not managed to form a government. And the numbers make it very complicated to form something else. So if they now were to say, okay, nobody will work with us, so we will organize new elections, under current polling, actually, they have risen. So if they were to have another election in the Netherlands now, they could go to the public and say, you voted us #1, but nobody wanted to work with us. Therefore, you need to vote for us again as #1 to give us even more seats. It actually would work. They would increase and gain even more seats than they have now. So yeah, it is a worrying trend. What we need to be better at is channeling a bit more hope than just fear. Fear is very powerful. It brings people, it motivates people to vote. But we need to start talking to some of the concerns that they've raised. So we know from having done polling over the last 4 or 5 years and looking at all the other opinion polls across Europe that have been conducted, that migration is not one of the main issues that will get people to vote. They're worried about the rising costs of their food, of their energy. of whether they're going to have a job in a few weeks' time because of AI. They're worried about lots of other things. So if we were to do a big campaign on this is the Liberal plan for tackling illegal immigration across the Mediterranean, okay, that would be good in some countries, but it doesn't talk to a lot of people that are potential voters to us in other countries, where they don't see that as their biggest priority. It is a priority, absolutely, but it's not the reason why they would vote. So my home country is the United Kingdom, and it's always known in elections that if you want to win, you move towards the center. So you neither left nor right, but you never say anything bad about the health service. If you try to say, I'm going to reform the National Health Service, then you're going to lose the next election. It's clear. So people will avoid that. But yeah, it is a trend we've noticed in countries. We will have messaging strategies for certain countries. Our members in other countries already see this and have started to try to shape the narrative. But yeah, if we don't talk to what people are most concerned about, then yeah, they won't listen to us.
Thank you. And we have some questions from the other people. So the first one, do you expect that the average age of the new MMPs will be lower than before, and how might it affect the future of the European Union?
Actually, that is an extremely good question. And yeah, I actually do expect the average age of the European Parliament to come down. I think it will be. I think that's partly because we're gonna have a lot more young candidates that are passionate. That climate change brought a lot of new people to political parties. It made them passionate about something and gave them something to take to the streets about. Yeah, and we're also seeing a lot of older members of the European Parliament that are retiring, or they're not standing again, or they have returned back to national parliament. So yeah, I think the average age in the European Parliament, I don't have the stats immediately to hand, but I would be surprised if it did not come down. We are definitely seeing more women elected to the European Parliament. That's definitely a positive trend. But that also is a reason of more women that want to be candidates, which again is something at ALDE we're really passionate about, and we're already quite happy that half of our lead candidates are women. So yeah, we just need to get even more young people, and the younger people tend to have a different view on what's a priority for them. They're more future orientated, and they want to create the world that they want to live in, which is absolutely great, because otherwise you have older members that will be a bit more conservative and like, well, we don't want too much more change.
Yes, good. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on this question. So let's see what's next. How do you plan to promote unity and solidarity among European citizens during European Parliament elections? If you do, of course.
Yeah, blimey, these are good questions. So yeah, I mean, what I'd say is, yes, we will do that. There will be a narrative that Europe has to work together. Absolutely. It might not be such a big message, but yes, it will be a message. I mean, you just look at the global stage. I mean, the November, we're potentially looking at Donald Trump coming back into the White House. I mean, goodness me. We're looking at a China that is getting more assertive and is threatening Taiwan. In a world of big political actors, the European Union really needs to be united to be a stronger voice on the global stage. But more concretely, down to the average voter, I think, yeah, there needs to be more feelings of unity. We've seen in the past few years when there have been attempts to close the borders between countries, to put limits on the Schengen zone. There's been pushbacks, because people quite like of that. So in Belgium, it's actually cheaper to drive over the border to do your groceries in France than it is to actually do them in Belgium. So quite a lot of people do that. So the European Union is helping to bring down these barriers. Any attempt to put them up is coming with more pushback, and people are seeing these. So as we obviously want to have a more European feeling towards this. How it can be achieved. Hopefully through our campaign we can help foster a bit of that. Definitely.
Yeah, the same situation with the Switzerland people who are making shopping in Germany. So next question, what political and social trends and changes do you observe in the context of preparations for the elections, which will be?
What political trends? Well, in terms of political trends, I said they're mainly 27 national elections to one body. They just happen to all be at the same time. We're seeing some trends where, for example, Croatia is one that I'm watching very closely, because they're not supposed to have elections until I think September, but there's a very good chance they might even be in April. And if they end up being April, then why not put them in June at the same time? They could always move. So the European elections are useful that they are adding a European angle to some national political discussions. But because they're happening, they could also drag the national elections into them. So then, potentially you have 27 different elections on 27 national campaigns to one body that then has to act as one European one. In terms of social trends, that's a really interesting one. I don't quite know. I mean, what's really interesting, and I'd love to know if there's any research on this, but just before the European, so in June and July, I think, are the European Football Championships in Germany. Now, this is really interesting because it basically puts everybody in their national colours, and you don't talk about Europe. You defend your own country when they're playing football. There is a competition in golf where the European Union actually has one team that is against the United States, which is a very interesting dynamic. And you have people waving European flags for a sporting bit. But just before the referendum where the UK voted to leave the European Union, we had a football championships where England did particularly well, but they lost in the semi-finals to a European team. And then 2 weeks later, we voted to leave the European Union. So I'm sure they're not connected, but I hope they're not. But in terms of social things, I mean, we will also have the Eurovision Song Contest in May. So 1 month before the European elections. That's pretty uniting culturally and socially. Maybe that could make a difference. I don't know. But I don't know if that's the social that you mean in your question, but it's an interesting concept.
I don't know also what it was, what the people want to know, but still, thank you. And I think one more about digital campaigning now. How do you plan to leverage social media and online platforms to connect with the voters and promote voter education leading up to European Parliament elections?
Again, that is a super question. To be honest, I don't have I don't have the solution for that. We are still learning. So this time will be my third European Parliament elections. In 2014 was my first one. We didn't have Twitter. That was quite new. So we've come a long way in 10 years already. This campaign will be digital, and in some countries, our parties do that really well. In some countries, paper still works. So actually having what you want to say on a leaflet and putting it through somebody's door is still going to be the most effective way of campaigning. But this election, we're looking at the threat of AI and disinformation is going to be a really big factor. Quite how big, we absolutely don't know. Twitter, or X as I should call it now, used to be a platform that you could understand and you can work with. Now that the algorithm has changed, does that mean that we're only going to talk to the people that like us already? In which case, that's a completely different messaging campaign to if we're appealing to a much wider audience. And most campaigns, I mean, tackling disinformation, if you have a good case study, we'd love to see it, because it's very hard to fully do it. Most cases, it's done the damage before you've had a chance to reply. And then with the algorithms, the reply doesn't often have the same viewing as the original. Yeah, it's a very complicated and a difficult one. It is something that our national parties are witnessing in their own campaigns. But we do have parties that are doing actually quite a good job on this. I will point to very quickly our new member party in Slovakia. They just had parliamentary elections in Slovakia. In the previous ones, they ran as a coalition and just missed out by, I think, 50 votes from entering parliament. It was super close. But this time they ran on their own. They had a better idea of what campaign they needed to do. And yeah, they ran an extremely good campaign. But they also knew that they were going to be targeted by disinformation and fake social media. And sure enough, when it happened, yeah, there was a fake audio of the party leader that emerged on Twitter a few days before the bits. They had a plan. They put out their statement super quick and said, look, that's clearly not him. That's rubbish. Yeah, and it had an impact, but at the same time, they moved it into their own messaging by saying, well, of course they would target us. Our party now have 34 members of parliament. They're the biggest party in opposition. They are looking very strong, and they're currently leading the protests on the streets in Bratislava. So, yeah, they're doing very, very nicely. So we might get them to do a few presentations to us as well. But it's going to be a new area of the campaign that did not exist 5 years ago to the extent that it is now. Absolutely.
Yes. Now also more about this topic. So what actions do you support and implement to ensure the cybersecurity of elections to the European Parliament and to prevent external interference?
Yeah, so again, very good question. In terms of, I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's as much paranoia in Europe to election interference as there is in countries like the United States, where they do voting machines and bits. As I showed with my graph earlier, the 27 countries do 27 different ways. So in some countries, you cannot vote online, or you do not vote on a machine. In the UK, it is still a piece of paper with a pencil. And it's very hard for an international actor to interfere in an election if it is paper and pencil. Very difficult in the actual results. But they will try to influence in other ways, and this is where the disinformation comes in. Yeah, so each country will have its own standards and what it wants to do. I think the Estonia is a real pioneer in this. They are almost 100% digital elections, and they clearly work. They've been doing it for years. And this is largely due to the work that liberal parties in government with a digital agenda have really pushed forward. But Estonia is way out there beyond some of our other parties and countries that, yeah, they will vote using traditional pen and paper in a ballot box.
Thank you. We have more questions for you today. So how has Brexit affected the distribution of places in the European Parliament? Do you think some countries could benefit from it and possibly obtain extra places?
Yes, so on the one of my slides at the front, so the UK used to have 70 or 80, I forget the exact number, but we used to be one of the biggest countries in the chamber. And when the UK left, there suddenly became lots of rows at the back of the parliament that were suddenly empty. So ALDE and Renew and a few other parties and groupings, we were like, well, why don't we use those seats to make more observer members of the European Parliament? So countries like Ukraine that are members of they have applied to join, but they still participate in the European Parliament as observers. So you wouldn't be able to vote, you wouldn't be able to speak in debates, but you'd be able to contribute and observe the work of the European Union. This motion, well, it needed to be agreed by the European Council. So all of the prime ministers, the heads of states. And as we've seen increasingly, it only takes one country to veto. So it's not difficult to find a veto on matters such as that. Instead, the compromise was reallocation of those seats to other countries. But they did not allocate all of them. So there will be still some seats in the European Parliament empty in the next mandate. And ALDE is in its manifesto again going to make a call for observer seats for applicant countries because the seats exist. There's no reason why we can't use them, so let's use them. But in my slide at the start, it was sort of an overview to show which ones gained. So, you know, Spain and France gained 2, and the Netherlands 2, and basically most countries gained 1 or 2, but they did not reallocate the entire UK seats that we used to have.
I also prepared one more question, so it will be long. Ukraine facility contains a point regarding the confiscation of Russian assets, and this is certainly a good initiative. The question is there the amount provided for by the Ukraine facility, which will also include funds from confiscated assets, or it will be a separate track, since it was previously said that those 18 billion will be separate from the confiscated funds? Of course, you know the answer.
That is an excellent question that I wish Petras was on the line and would be able to tell you. Without knowing the full details of the bill that will go in Parliament next week, I don't think so, because when it comes to the reusing of seized assets, this remains the national member states. So the European Parliament can say, yes, we want you to do that and to do this, but it's actually the national governments that have to do that. This tends to be also the way the European Union works on any issues towards tax. So you will find that there are lots of different tax rates across Europe because it is still the power of the national government. So I know in Belgium quite a couple of months ago, the Belgian government announced that it would use the interest accrued on the frozen assets to help reconstruct Ukraine. But so there are, there's plenty of movement in that direction, but it still needs the national governments to move on that. Whether it's in the new facility, I don't know the details on that fully, but I will read it with interest as well.
And I think I have the last question. So do you think the next European Parliament will help to Ukraine as this one are?
So this is again a very good question to end with, because it strikes really why these European elections are important. They may not seem important. If you walk around some of the countries, you'll talk to people and say, did you know there's a European election in June? And most will say, nope, didn't know. But they are super important, because if we have a low turnout, we know that the most passionate to vote are the extremists and the conservatives. They will have a majority in the next European Parliament. If that is the case, then do not expect much progress on enlargement. I think they would be quite happy to put the walls up and say, no, let's start to roll back what Europe is doing rather than roll forward. This is why we want as many liberals back in the parliament, because we need to be really strong to be able to have the votes to move forward on this agenda. The more the far right take away from progressive centrists and left members of the parliament, the less Europe is going to be looking forward, but the more it's going to be looking back. So yeah, there is a lot of stake in these. And this is why it is very important. If you can help, please help. We need as much help as we can. We can never have too much help. But it's if you can talk to people in countries that were not aware of the European elections and why it's important, you can get them involved. You can make sure they register to vote, because each country has its own rules. Some you're automatically signed up. In some countries, you have to sign up to then get a vote. But yeah, these elections are really important, and we want to have a European Parliament that continues to move Europe forward, and not one that's going to try and burn the house down and put a stop on what we want to do. Yeah.
I think I have one more question for myself. So what do you think, if Ukraine, or when Ukraine will be the part of European Parliament, how many places will we have, and what will be with the other places in the Parliament?
Yeah, well, this is going to be a very interesting discussion, because the seats in the parliament are allocated according to your population size. So with Ukraine being quite a big country, you're going to get quite a lot of MEPs. There will then be two choices. You can either add those MEPs on top of what there currently is in the European Parliament, in which case you will need to build extra seats in the chambers, or you get every other country in the European Union to reduce their number to able to you guys to join and not have to change everything. So there is it's a very practical answer, but it's an important one. And then you will have some countries that will say, well, actually, Ukraine is such a big country, it's going to have so many votes. Do we want this? Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, you're going to have that debate in some countries. Not all, but you will. So yeah, so it's not going to be an easy route. I think, as Petros has mentioned to you, yeah, it could be long. But yeah, this is why we need as many liberals and as many pro-Ukrainian parties that are willing to make this fight in order to try and break down some of these challenges that will come up.
Yeah, from my side, there is no questions. I think Alexander want to add something.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you once more for such, details about how the EU elections and the trends is going on. I'm sure it's really for our youth win, and the international department of it is quite interesting. I want to first of all highlight there is one more question regarding the support of EU, and I think this question have the obvious answer. We have Ukraine EU facility, and the first question from my side. So in any case, it will be, as far as I understand, adopted in the end, like the final voting will be, or final decision will be in the end of the February. Yeah, is this the right agenda that I know, or how will be the next steps regarding Ukraine facility program that is leading by EU? How this will be working? Could you give more, more insights that you know? Thank you. This is the first question.
So on the facility, so if the Parliament will vote in plenary next week, then it will go to the European Council, which will then sign off. Realistically, then we're probably looking at the European Summit in March, would be when things would then be all wrapped up and concluded. But so I'm not super expert on that particular file, but that sort of timeline makes sense. because nothing can be adopted if the Parliament and the Council don't both vote and agree on it.
Thank you. It's was helpful also to understand all the the dates. So because it's the big program that I'm sure we all see have the political will of the main players of Europarlament and Euro institution to support, and will be 50 billion for next 4 years, and this is really important support for Ukraine. That's why I'm like highlighting this question regarding, of course, this topic of Europarlament and other. The second and the last question from my side regarding the main topic of today's education. Do you see some what examples or what's approach of the elections blow your mind mostly? I don't know, like you say about the numbers in the list, maybe you see something really unique that the only country have, like some funny stuff, I don't know, or not ordinary stuff regarding the process of election or process of campaign or election itself. So please share with us some, I don't know, funny stuff if you have in your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I didn't think of something like that. No, it's always very interesting, and you never quite know what's going to pop up. You really don't. As I said, because in the spring now, most of the parliaments will be electing. They will be adopting their own election rules. Most have already done it. I think some may do it. Yeah, let's see what these rules throw up. I mean, the fact now that we have a Ukrainian-born candidate that could potentially be elected in Latvia, I find really interesting. In some countries, you can only be a candidate if you're from that country. But here we potentially have history in the making, which is great that it's a liberal. Yeah, in some others, I mean, in some countries like Belgium, you have a list, and you can choose a priority list, and people can jump up. In some countries, it's a fixed list. So if you get 4 seats, then it's the top 4 on the list. But yeah, there can be some prizes sometimes in European elections that somebody right down the bottom of a list, they agree, oh yeah, okay, I'll be a name on your list, and they actually get so many votes that they get elected. Yeah, that can happen sometimes as well. That's why us here at headquarters, we have a database of all of the different lists and contact details, so we can sort of see which way it's going, and then we can immediately try to assess who's going to be our new members of the European Parliament. That's quite a fun game that we like to try to do. But then it's going to be in English we have a phrase that a week is a long time in politics. Between now and the European elections, there is at least 4 months. There's plenty of time for surprises. 3 months, sorry. There's plenty of time for surprises. We could see a new party pop up that suddenly becomes huge and takes 25% of the vote. We could see a general election called just before, which then changes the sequencing. Who knows? There could be many different fascinating bits. A country like Belgium might decide actually 16-year-olds can't vote. I mean, they won't, because they've only just approved it. That would be quite embarrassing. But yeah, never know. We always keep an eye out on these things.
Yes, Andrew, thank you so much for so much inputs and so much information, and even your presentation. And also I want to ask, can we share this presentation with our members? Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, be my guest.
Okay, thank you. And yes, we will see each other in March in Brussels. And for other people, thank you also that you were with us. And thank you one more time, Andrew. And I think that's all for today. Yes, Alexander, Andrew, you don't want to add nothing? So if not, I wish you a good evening and a peaceful evening in Ukraine, of course, for
Absolutely.
Only one thing, just to make some understanding. So we will have one more, about the budgeting of EU, or it will be one more session I think with you, Andrew, or this will be, we will discuss this later.
I guess I'll learn about this a bit later.
Thank you one more.
Very good.
And
You're very welcome, and thank you all for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
and thank you all for all who see this video till then. You are the great ones and future members of European Parliament, I hope. See ya.
Bye bye.